Today we're going to learn how to analyze a solid sample in the IR. So if your product or your sample that you're trying to analyze is a solid, there's one of a couple techniques that we can use by IR, and one of those is making a solid pellet. So today we're going to learn how to make that pellet and how to analyze it by IR spectroscopy. So here's all the pieces that we're going to be needing for the solid IR sample preparation. We've got a spatula just to maneuver our solids around. We've got a mortar and pestle. We've got some potassium bromide, and this is just a white crystalline salt. That's going to be the main component of our pellet. And we've also got a sample to analyze. In my case, this is salicylic acid. Also, on the other side, we're going to be needing a 3-piece IR die set. And so these 3 pieces are matched together. So if you see 3 together, don't exchange them with another 3. But there is a middle donut, you can see in the middle, one with a hole through the center. And then there's a bolt that has a larger stem, and then a bolt with a much smaller stem. So you'll need all 3 of those pieces, as well as the pellet press itself. So those 3 pieces of the die set will go in this little insert right in the center here, and then you'll actually press this together using this instrument. So that's all you need. Let's go ahead and get started. One key to success before you start the IR is to make sure that all of the 3 pieces of the pellet press are extremely clean, and that both your mortar and pestle are clean and there's no solid left in there from the last person who did the run. If these are dirty especially, it's going to be even tougher to make that IR pellet that's inside. So make sure that you, after you get done running, make sure it's clean, and then before you start your run, make sure the person before you had it clean for you. You're probably going to want to rinse them with water and then maybe dry them off with a chem wipe. So that's really important to making sure this process is as smooth as possible. So the first thing you'll do is weigh out about 150 milligrams of the KBR salt. And I've already done this on a weigh paper. It doesn't have to be exactly 150 milligrams, but in that neighborhood. So once you get that KBR salt, you're going to pour that into the mortar and pestle. From there, you're going to add your sample, which for me is salicylic acid, like I've said. So for your sample, you're literally only going to need just the tip of a spatula with that material. So you can see that on my spatula, just barely what would be a milligram or 2, just kind of the tip of my spatula full of solid. And I'm going to put that in as well. If you don't have the right mix of KBR to your sample, it can end up making the pellet too sticky, and then it's tough to get out of that pellet press. So once you've gotten your sample in there, and you can see it's not very much at all, just barely down there in the bottom, you're going to grind that up until it's as homogeneous as you can get it. So work it around in different directions, push it off the walls if you need to. And when you're finished, you should have enough solid to give you a few attempts at actually pressing this solid into a pellet. So if you can see, it's kind of spread out there, and you can use your spatula to kind of scrape that all down to the center. So next, we're going to take the 3 pieces of our pellet press. If you remember, we had the short bolt, the large bolt, and then the donut. So you're going to take the short bolt, and the donut will slide right on top of that. And this is actually where you're going to put your solid sample to be pressed into the pellet. So with this, I'm just going to set it down here on the bench. I'm going to load in just enough sample to give a thin layer covering the surface of the metal. And this is usually the toughest part to get right having too much in there is going to make a pellet that's too thick. Having too little is going to make a pellet that won't hold up when you press it. So you probably won't be able to see it too well with this kind of zoom, but there are a few places where the metal is poking through, so it's not a full solid cover of that powder, but it's kind of spread throughout. If you have a little spatula, it could even spread it inside of there to help you get even distribution. That might even be a little bit better. So once you've gotten this evenly spread, and this, like I said, might take a couple attempts, you're going to put the top part of the donut, and now you're ready to press. So you take one of your pellet presses, so here's one, you can see the opening there, and then you're going to support this by the bottom of the die set. So if you support by the top, it's going to pull out, so make sure you support by the bottom, and then you're just going to slide this into the pellet press. So once you get that inside the pellet press, this handle should squeeze together so that there's a little tension, but eventually it squeezes all the way in. So now I've got it squeezed together. I'm not putting brute force strength on it. It kind of locks in place, and at this point it's actually pressing that solid in between the two bolts. So I would leave it there for 5-10 seconds, and then be very careful to gingerly open this up so that you don't jar that pellet. So once it's open up, again, you want to support it by the bottom. To remove the actual pellet, you want to support by the bottom and middle, and then very carefully take that top off. Next, you're going to turn it sideways and gently twist off the small bolt. So what we should get out of that is a pellet that's got some translucent character in between the donut. So you can see maybe a little bit on this kind of zoom, but there's actually some light that can transmit through, and you can tell it a lot easier if you take your hand. You can kind of see the change in the light when I put my hand up there and then remove it. That transparent or translucent nature is going to be important because IR is going to actually have to travel through that pellet in order to get some kind of absorbance when we put it inside the machine. So if yours is too thick, and you can kind of see some thicker parts down around the bottom in this right side, if yours is too thick, then it's just not going to be able to obtain a good looking IR. If you have to, you may need to remake the pellet so that you've got some translucent nature and you can see some of that light difference when you put your hand behind it. So next we need to run this in the actual IR instrument. So if you're more curious about how to actually run the IR instrument, you may want to check out the video on infrared spectroscopy. But for this, I'm just going to show you how to load. So once you've done the background run on your IR, you're going to open up this top latch, and then, being really careful not to break your IR pellet, you're going to slide that down and set it right on the two pegs that hold the sample in place. So once you've gotten that in place and it's as straight as you can get it on those two pegs, then you'll be ready to close up the instrument and do the sample run.